Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, top 10 players for this Georgia program heading into 2024 until we've done a couple of these top 10 lists. None as hard as doing it for this Georgia program, and it has nothing to do with not finding 10 players to talk about. It has a lot more to do with, leaving out guys who are legitimate all SEC and in some circumstances, all-American caliber players that are not going to be on this top 10 list. I guess the first rule of this episode, the Georgia Bulldog fans, let us have it in the comment section. There are going to be players that you see that we might be sleeping on. We learn a ton from you guys. It is the best part about doing this is talking ball with you guys in the comment section. So let us have it. Drop some players we're sleeping on. Drop your top 10 list for the Georgia Bulldogs. And if you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. The Georgia Bulldog fans, you guys, and continue to show a ton of love, a ton of support to the boys, whether we're talking on the recruiting trail, the transfer portal. Can't thank you guys enough. So if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, let's get into it. Let's just start with the hot take. Get the hot take out of the way. Our number 10 player for this Georgia program, a guy that doesn't even start for Georgia, Jalon Walker. And I think it starts with, you talk about the best pure pass rusher not only on this Georgia team, in my opinion, but one of the better pure pass rushers that you see in the country, I think it's Jalon Walker for the Georgia Bulldogs.
And I think that he needs to have a bigger role in a sense in this team and not necessarily expand in terms of him playing on first and second down, because it's hard to take some of those guys off who are really good run defenders. But I think Jalon Walker should have more than 5 sacks, just because you mentioned how good he is as a pass rusher and how effective he was when he was on the field. And he can rush from the inside, can rush from the outside, has really good instincts in terms of getting to running quarterbacks, especially. I thought it was a very impressive game against Jalen Milroe and helping to contain him. So, again, a guy I think can really amp this pass rush up. I think they can use him in different ways, can allow guys like Damon Wilson to get on the field with him. And a guy I think should be able to bolster a pass rush that certainly needs to get better.
Yeah, you look at that one aspect that I think kind of held Georgia back in 2023, and make no mistake, it wasn't many aspects, but having that elite pass rush, it might have not been there for Georgia in 2023. A guy like Jalon Walker, I think, can take you back to where that pass rush needs to be for this Georgia program to win a national championship. And you kind of said it best. I'm not necessarily advocating for him to play on first and second down. You know, you got guys like Mykel Williams or Chaz Chambliss who are hammers in the run game. That's the recipe for Georgia, right? Win on first and second down, be stout against the run like Georgia always is, and then trot a guy on like Jalon Walker onto the field in those third and long situations. Say, big dog, like pin your ears back, get after the quarterback, because I don't think there's many players in the country that are better at pass rushing the quarterback than a guy like Jalon Walker. Going to number 9, and Dill, this is a your guy, so I'll just kind of let you have the T-box left tackle Ernest Greene here.
Yeah, and I think you saw how good he was in the pass pro. You obviously can look at those stats, really effective there. But what I think really separates him is just that athleticism and what he can do in the run game and in the screen game, because I thought he was an elite perimeter blocker, can obviously move guys, has the strength, size that you kind of expect from Georgia players. But his ability to get out in the perimeter and allow Georgia to run those tosses, run those screens, big part of what they like to do on offense, I think makes me think that he probably is going to be the highest pick on this Georgia football team or Georgia offensive line in the starting 5.
Yeah, I think he has NFL talent written all over him. And I say this, these big bodies that are that good of athletes, they're awfully rare. And they all seem to wind up in Athens, Georgia. Think about a guy like Amarius Mims. Ernest Greene, very similar MO, just a big functional athlete. And I think what's most exciting for Georgia fans is this kid was a redshirt freshman starting at left tackle in the SEC last year and played damn well. And what happens when he takes that year 3 jump that we see a lot of guys along the line of scrimmage take? I think you're looking at one of the best tackles in the country for this Georgia program going to number 8, and it's going to be my guy. And it's going to be Dominic Lovett. And this might be a little bit of a hot take because I know a lot of Georgia fans are fired up about guys like Oscar Delp, like Colby Young, and phenomenal football players, right? 2 guys that are all conference caliber guys. You look at Dominic Lovett and say, had a really solid season, kind of flew under the radar in 2023, 54 catches, 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. But you look at how that Georgia wide receiver room was constructed last year. Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, they kind of thrived in the kind of similar role that Dominic Lovett likes to thrive in. And so with those guys moving on to the NFL, I think you're looking at your leading receiver in terms of receptions, yards. I think he's going to lead this team in targets. You look at where Carson Beck likes to attack the field over the middle in those short intermediate route trees. Dominic Lovett, an extremely friendly quarterback friendly wide receiver, I should say, right? 76% completion percentage, very good after the catch. I can see why Georgia fans might take Colby Young, might take Dylan Bell, might take Oscar Delp. I'm rocking with Dominic Lovett heading into 2024.
I think you make a good point about kind of Dominic Lovett being able to really thrive, because I think he can eat up a lot of the share of what you're going to lose in Bowers and McConkey especially. I think you do want to see them be able to push the ball down the field a little bit more consistently. You look at Colby Young, London Humphreys, Arian Smith, some of those guys who, again, are kind of built to do that. I think that should be more part of their offense. I certainly think that you can see the way they use the portal. It will be more a part of their offense. But at the end of the day, Carson Beck is elite in the middle. That's probably where he's going to want to do most of his work. And you're right, Dominic Lovett, you kind of look at his game. That's where it really
you look at having a big boundary wide receiver like Colby Young, like safeties are going to have to respect that. Or the speedsters, guys like Humphreys and Arian Smith. And as a result of that, that middle of the field is going to be easy pickings for this Georgia offense. I think Dominic Lovett certainly going to thrive because of that. Going to number 7, and it's so wild that we have, in my mind, a first-team All-American linebacker coming in at number 7 for this Georgia program. And that's going to be Smael Mondon. And you look at 68 tackles, 5 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, was number 2 in the team in tackles last year, 18 run stops, led the Georgia Bulldogs last year, a 6.9% missed tackle rate. You just look at one of the purely best linebackers in the country. You're looking at one here for the Georgia Bulldogs.
And he obviously has the athleticism, the range at that 6'3", 220, 230-pound range. But he also just plays the way Georgia linebackers want to play.
Downhill.
Kirby Smart has taught him, just plays downhill, very physical, doesn't make a ton of tackles outside of 5 yards. And that's exactly what you want. So, again, just a prototypical Georgia linebacker who plays at a really high level every game.
Yeah, average depth of tackle is incredible for Smael Mondon. And yes, he benefits from having an elite Georgia defensive line in front of him, but you talk about a linebacker that just gets downhill, can go sideline to sideline. Very similar story. One of the best running backs in the country coming in at number 6, Trevor Etienne. And we won't spend too much time on this one because I know Georgia fans are very familiar with Trevor Etienne. What I'm most excited for is this was a guy that averaged 5.7 yards per carry last year behind a Florida offensive line that was one of the worst units in the SEC. You talk about what is he going to look like behind a Georgia offensive line that's one of the best units, not only in the SEC, but in the country, a guy that deals with contact phenomenally well, 4 yards per carry after contact, 35 missed tackles forced. You saw in the spring game, just looks a little bit different carrying that rock. I think this is, kind of a bona fide, not only one of the best running backs in the country, but a guy that is going to be extremely productive for this Georgia program. On top of that, very good pass catcher as well. And you've seen Georgia get really effective using running backs as weapons in the passing attack. Going into our top 5, and Dill, let's start with just, in my opinion, like the face of this Georgia program, and that's going to be Tate Ratledge. You look at the numbers, and pass pro just so nails. You talk about Georgia fans, and as Michigan fans too, kind of take it for granted, just having rock solid offensive lines. I mean, Tate Ratledge in the SEC last year, 0 sacks, only 5 quarterback hurries on 418 pass pro snaps, has played I think he started every single game for the last 2 years, over 1,500 snaps the last 2 seasons. I think it starts and stops with Tate Ratledge up front, top 5 player for this Georgia program.
And just such a good job opening up holes and getting the linebackers. That's one thing I really noticed. And in Georgia, they all do it. But you kind of even think to that Alabama game, that first touchdown. I mean, just they execute that type of block, it feels like, consistently, open up big holes. And then again, you kind of think about what Trevor Etienne can bring. When he had holes at Florida, he was really good at exploiting them. The way Ratledge and this offensive line, the way they get up to linebackers, open up those holes, I mean, it's a really nice combo you got going there.
All right, get into our second hot take of the episode here, and that is CJ Allen coming in at number 4. And I get there's a little bit of projection here, right? You're talking about a linebacker that, came on in a massive way as a true freshman. At that linebacker spot, Dill, you see some linebackers play as true freshmen, and they flash that athleticism. You think about a guy like Anthony Hill at Texas. You think about a guy like Harold Perkins, just flashing the elite athleticism. CJ Allen has that, right? This is a guy that ran an 11-second 100-meter at the high school track meets, and then a guy that combines that elite athleticism with probably one of the more heady, higher IQ linebackers that you see in the country, getting another year under his belt in this Georgia defense. I mean, Georgia's going to get him for 2 more years at the very least. That you're talking about one of the better linebackers that I've seen as a true freshman in a very long time.
And I think you're right to say that, because just the way the speed at which he played, not like the physical speed, but just getting to the right spots when he's supposed to on time. Just again, really dynamic player, big for that linebacker role, but really moves well. So almost at that 240 range, or feels like it's a good size linebacker to move that way. That's exactly what you kind of want.
Getting into our number 3, and I think a lot of Georgia fans know what the top 3 is going to look like. Mykel Williams coming in at number 3. And Dill, I'll say this. I want to see a little bit more pass rush juice from Mykel Williams, right? And that's being picky, but I think this is an All-American caliber guy, right? An 11.5% pass rush win rate. Damn solid number. I think that can be closer to 18, 19. 17 quarterback hurries, was second on the team in quarterback hurries. He's a lead against the run. And again, it doesn't necessarily show up in the stat sheet, right? 18 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. But this is a guy that when you turn on the film, just plays with a different level of physicality at the point of attack, sheds blocks extremely well, holds the line of scrimmage. It's not always flashy what Mykel Williams does, but the Georgia fans that watch a lot of Georgia football, they have an appreciation for what Mykel Williams brings to the table. And then getting into our top 2, and I think there's going to be a lot of debate here on like who's going to be the second or first player. We have Carson Beck coming in at number 2. And I've been very vocal that I think Carson Beck, if you were to ask me, I got to go win a lot of football games in 2024, what quarterback am I taking? I'm taking Carson Beck. I think there was a narrative that he was going to be just a game manager for this Georgia offense when he won the battle in fall camp. That certainly wasn't true. You start looking at some of the numbers, right? Almost 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 72% completion percentage. Here's the kicker for me. I mean, 40% completion percentage, 20-plus yards down the field. He was top 10 in the country in both completion percentage and yards per pass. So what does that tell you about Carson Beck? He's pushing the ball down the field, but he's also throwing at a very high completion percentage. You're talking about, in my mind, the best quarterback in the country heading into 2024.
And you can even throw in a little bit of athleticism that, again, you kind of see at moments. He makes those big plays when they need him on those third downs. He has that escapability. So you obviously read off all the stats and kind of discuss what he can do throwing it. We all know he can throw it, but he does certainly have some more athleticism than I think people give him credit for, and uses that very effectively at times. And those are big moments. They're big yards. They're big first down conversions. So again, he's just kind of a complete package. And I don't think we've really seen a Georgia quarterback, maybe going back to like Matt Stafford or something, who's really that dynamic and will be a top 5 pick.
That's kind of what we've been talking about. Like a lot of these Georgia teams that have won national championships, like the boys have loved Stetson Bennett. I can't remember the last time we've been talking about a Georgia quarterback being the NFL caliber prospect that Carson Beck has been. Now going up to number 1, Dill, it was hard to put Carson Beck at 2 because, again, I just said he was the best quarterback in the country. Malaki Starks is one of the best players in all of college football, if not the best player in college football. And we've been kind of kicking around, me and you kind of talking late at night, what guy should be 99 overalls in the college football video game that's coming out. If there's a candidate to be a 99 overall, you're looking at him in Malaki Starks. And when you start looking at the numbers, and we don't have to dive too far into it because I do want to have an honorable mention portion to this. 52 tackles, 7 pass breakups, 3 interceptions. He is exceptionally versatile. Probably the best pure free safety that you see in the country in terms of going after balls, covering a lot of ground. But then you take a look at what he does in the run game. I mean, 12 run stops. That was second on the team for the Georgia Bulldogs. I had to look back and verify that stat. Absolutely incredible. From a guy at the free safety position, a 4.8% missed tackle rate, can hold up in man coverage. How many safeties can check all those boxes in terms of being great run supporters, holding up in man coverage, elite ball skills when you're playing that center field safety spot? You're looking at, again, for my money, probably the best player in college football.
I know, for a guy who I always think of as a rangy, ultra elite free safety, I mean, he really can play that physical game as well. And just as complete as it gets, and he's been doing it since he was a freshman. I mean, he
I
burst on the
know.
scene. He was one of the best safeties in the country that year. I think unarguably the best safety in college football last year. It's almost hard to project what he's going to be this year because you just looked, he doesn't have any real weaknesses in his
I
game.
was when I was putting this together, I was like, got it. This is last year of college football. I feel like this kid was just coming onto the scene, and now he's going into his last year for this Georgia program. Makes me feel a little bit old. Now, Dale, let's get into just a few honorable mentions. I want to shout out Warren Brinson. I think he was very good for it. And we were kind of critical of not having enough game records on the inside. Warren Brinson was kind of that dude, along with Christian Miller, who I think certainly could be a top 10 player for this Georgia program with that year 3 step. And then you start looking through some other guys, Colby Young, certainly on that list, Oscar Delp, but not only him, Benjamin Urasek as well, a guy that I don't think is nearly getting enough credit. I think a lot of Georgia fans like to gravitate to Oscar Delp, who's an exceptional football player. Certainly not a shot at my guy, Oscar Delp, but I think Benjamin Urasek is a difference maker. There's a reason Kirby Smart went to Benjamin Urasek in the portal when they have one of the best tight end rooms in the country. They'll give you the opera. I kind of think I ate up a lot of these honorable mentions. You got any that I've been sleeping on?
God, there's a ton. I mean, you look, Xavier Truss could certainly be on that list. I think Dalen Everett.
Yeah.
If I was the one creating the list, which I was not, had final cut, Dalen Everett's on my list any day. I mean, just that prototypical big physical safety, can really play good man coverage. I think he certainly would deserve a look. Xavier Truss, obviously, but you could probably rattle off Raylan Wilson if you're going to make a bit of a projection. I mean, having that athleticism at the linebacker spot, as you kind of said at the top, it's really, really hard to stack Georgia's top 10 because you look, they're 20, 25 deep, a real NFL talent.
There was like a clear, I think, like top 5-ish, but then you start getting to some of these lists at the bottom and you're like, I could see making a lot of arguments for a lot of other different players. We'll cut it at that. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. These have been an absolute blast to do. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.